All right. And then Lauren. Lauren here is saying, in our type 3 group, I raised the question about whether some psychedelic substances, and this is everywhere now, we're hearing about psychedelic substances and microdosing and that sort of thing, whether they may have a restorative effect on the brain chemically or physically, as well as the psychological benefits that are being discovered. I've heard, I think there's someone at Stanford trying to isolate the restorative effects from the mind-altering effects. So yeah, this is an area of active exploration. Obviously, books coming out, podcasts, all this sort of thing. Let's summarize, 50 plus years of research in a couple of sentences. So what's interesting about these things, if you look at them in a very simple way, they are things that interact with a specific receptor, with some others as well, but especially one serotonin receptor, which is called 5-HT2A. Things like psilocybin and LSD interact with this. And the idea was that, okay, what you're really seeing is they're associated with dreaming, but now it's dreaming while you're awake. So you are taking these, these trips basically. And is this possible? Is this helpful some way? Does it really make you more creative? Now, the thing that's interesting, if you look at the signaling from these, it's related to the receptor I mentioned, 5-HT2A, track B and BDNF. Great. BDNF, we like to see, increases neuroplasticity, and mTOR, which is interesting, which is something associated with food intake. A little surprising, the 5-HT2A is thought to be more associated with slow wave sleep than with REM sleep. So that part doesn't quite match up. But for whatever reason, you get this phenomenon that's almost like dreaming while you're awake. And the good news is you actually do get some neuroplasticity, and you do see neurite growth. And so this is what people are looking at. So will microdosing of these things help? Well, maybe. The problem is they can also have some negative side effects. These things do impact your cognition. And so we may be able to do better with growth from things like whole coffee fruit extract than to go through these neurotransmitter approaches. But there's going to be more and more coming out on this, and you might consider it. But consider it with the notion that you're going to be very careful working with someone to see whether there are any negative impacts. And have any of your patients been doing microdosing of psychedelics?
I have a few younger people who are part of the Silicon Valley trend
Yeah.
of microdosing, and they feel strongly that it increases their productivity and creativity. That may well be true. I certainly can't say that that's true or not true. Interestingly, our friend Dr. David Perlmutter recently sent an email about microdosing.
Right.
So he's interested in it. But there is the MAPS Association, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Science, that's been doing research for 35 years, promoting and raising money to do the research. And, there are certain things where they are showing significant benefit from LSD and psilocybin, mostly in the area of depression, that kind of thing. And with MDMA for PTSD, right? And ketamine is approved for depression. Mostly it's effective for suicidal depression, very severe depression where everything else hasn't worked. Sometimes ketamine works. So there are these positive things, but I don't know that there's any significant research showing in the cognitive field that we're going to see cognitive benefits. I haven't seen that.
And this is why we need trials. So, we'll see as it comes up. And I should mention, you mentioned ketamine. That's a really good point. That's another one that's used. That one doesn't bind to 5-HT2A. That's actually an inhibitor of NMDA, which is a glutamatergic receptor or a glutamatergic analog that binds to glutamate receptors that are called NMDA receptors because it's a subtype of the glutamate receptors. So very, very different mechanism, but has some of the effects.